Hello guys, Charles here and welcome back to my channel. So we've talked about generating vocabulary on this channel in quite a few different videos in the past. Most recently we talked about Jim Hall saying that this was one of the core elements of his practice routine, is taking a musical motif and moving it through different harmonic contexts. So in this video I want us to hone into a specific element of motivic development, which is sequencing, and more specifically than that, how to tackle sequencing when the phrase itself has chromatics in it. Sequencing itself is a nice simple concept which I'll explain in a moment, but when there's chromatics involved there's actually a few rules which took me longer than they probably should have to figure out, so I'll share those with you today. So sequencing is taking normally a shorter set of notes and moving them through a scale by fixed amounts. So we might take 1, 2, 3, and then just move that through the major scale. So that would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm moving my hand there because I'm trying to illustrate that the contour of each phrase stays the same, although the specific intervals within that phrase will change slightly to accommodate the diatonic notes of the major scale. So by simply taking a small phrase and sequencing it through a scale, we can make it work on all 7 modal contexts and all 7 modal chords as well. So it's a really powerful tool. So let's look at a chromatic example. I'm going to illustrate what the problem is, and then I'm going to show you how to more appropriately break down the core cell so that you can move it more effectively through a diatonic sequence. So let's start by looking at the first phrase of Anthropology. Now I'm going to do this in the key of C major, this first example, just so that it's the clearest example possible, and then we'll do another example in the correct key in a moment. So if I take the first phrase, it looks like this. So what I need to do first of all, if I know I'm in C major, is I need to number these notes. So I've got C, so that'll be 1. I've got E, that'll be 3. D, that'll be 2. Back to 1, C. Up to 4. Then here's a chromatic note, a non-diatonic scale note. So in this instance, it's a D sharp or an E flat. So we can think of that as a sharp 2 or a flat 3. I personally prefer to think of that as a flat 3. Back up to 3, and then up to 5. So our sequence here is 1, 3, 2, 1, 4, flat 3, 3, 5. So now to sequence, all we do is move that up to the next scale tone. So staying using only the notes of C major, I'm now going to start that phrase and give the number 1 to D. So D is now 1, 1. Relative to D, D, E, F is number 3. 1, 3. 2 is E, 1, back to D. Number 4 is G in this instance. 1, 2, 3, 4. D, E, F, G. Now I've got to have a flat 3. So the problem with flattening the third in this instance is the third is already flattened. D to F is a minor third. D, E, F. Because remember, we've got to stick diatonic to the notes of C major. D, E, F. So there's not really an F flat. It's the same as playing an E. So we're going to have to play an E at that point. Then back up to the third, and then up to the 5th, which is A. So our phrase is this. Now that's fine, but it's lost the jazziness. Listen to the difference. So this is the original cell. And here's the first sequence of it. There's no juice in there. There's no secret sauce, special sauce. It's missing something. So here's what it's missing. When we analysed the original material, we looked at 1, 3, 2, 1, 4, flat 3, 3. Now what's going on there? 4, flat 3, 3. We call that an encirclement. And that's one of the chromatic devices available to us as a jazz player. The note we want is E, but we're going to approach it from a semitone above, F, and in this case a semitone below. This is a chromatic encirclement. E flat up to E. Now we can do a diatonic encirclement, which would be F, D, E. Doesn't sound as juicy though. Now the fact that it's chromatic, the fact that that sounds nice and juicy because it's a chromatic note, is more important than the fact that we approach the note from underneath. We went from a flat 3 up to a 3. The direction the note resolves is less important than the fact that it resolved chromatically. So with that in mind, if we come back to our first sequence on the note D, 1, 1, 3, 2, 1, 4, and then fall chromatically. What we call a chromatic approach. So the enclosure has become a chromatic approach. Because approaching that third by a semitone chromatically is more important than approaching that third from below. So you'll notice the contour's now slightly changed, but it keeps it sounding jazzy. Listen. Now we can carry on through the whole scale. I'm going to do this one in position, and then my next example I'm going to show you moving horizontally across the neck. So here's how this sounds. So that one I was able to approach from below. So that one there I had to approach chromatically from above. Because if I approach that third, which is C, from a semitone below, that's the note B, which is a diatonic note, so it's not going to sound as juicy. Doesn't have it. Yeah, that's got it. And we're back where we started. So let's look at another example of this. However, just to summarise the point we've made so far, is that the fact that the original phrase was chromatic was more important than the contour itself. The original phrase resolved upwards chromatically, whereas in certain points of the scale, you're going to find that that note below that you would want to resolve upwards from isn't a chromatic note, it's diatonic, because a major scale isn't symmetrical. So we need to make sure that we're keeping the chromaticism as a priority. And so all we do is, instead of doing an encirclement in that instance, we can just do the chromatic approach, which is a more linear method. So let's look at one more example, and this time I'm going to move horizontally across the fretboard rather than staying in position. So this is going to be confirmation, just the first phrase of confirmation. Again, I'm in a Charlie Parker mood this week. So this is our phrase. So in the key of F for this one. So let's number these notes. So relative to F, we've got 3, 5, 3, 4, 3, 7, 1, flat 2, to 2. So let's analyse that within the diatonic framework. Most of those notes are diatonic. Apart from this one, we've got a flat 2. So it's a chromatic approach to the 2, flat 2 up to the note 2. Now, that means that the fact that we're approaching the note 2 chromatically is more important than the fact that we're approaching it from below. So in some instances, that chromatic approach might have to be from above. So let's move that through the sequence, going horizontally across the neck this time. So let's look at that one. We've got relative to G, remember we're staying diatonically in the key of F. Note 2 is G, so we're going to give note 2 the assignment of note 1 now. So we start on note 3, which would be B flat in this instance. 5, 3, 4, 7 relative to G would be F to 1, G, flat 2, G sharp or A flat, up to A. So that one's similar but different. But you'll notice here that this phrase, which was originally all semitones, has now become a tone and 2 semitones. Carrying on. So that one there I had to do an enclosure. Because relative to A, I've got 3, 5, 3, C, E, C, 4, 3, D, C, 7 relative to A is G, then A is 1. Now, if I went up a semitone from A for a flat 2, that would give me a B flat, which is already in the key of F. So that's not chromatic, and the fact that it's chromatic is more important than the fact that it's a flat 2 that we're approaching from below. So we're instead going to go to B natural, which is not in the key of F major, and then resolve downwards to B flat, which gives me an encirclement or an enclosure. Carrying on. There's another one there. This one's relative to E, so 3 would be G, 5, 3 would be B flat, 3, G, 4 is A, 3 is G, 7 relative to E is D, up to 1 is E, flat 2 would give me F, so I don't want that because that is a diatonic note and I need a chromatic note, so I'm going to go F sharp and resolve downwards to F. So there's my other encirclement. And we're back where we started. So in summary, if your original content that you want to sequence, which is a very powerful tool that you should be practicing. It's also great, by the way, if you are very good with your scales, but you still don't feel that your playing reflects that you are confident with your scales, which is a kind of annoying place to be, where you can play all your scales in all positions, but when you actually come to improvising and creating music, you maybe aren't quite as confident with your scales as your scale playing suggests you are. So moving things in sequences and really understanding the structure of that scale is a really, really powerful tool because that's more close to how you should be playing when you're improvising. So the tricky thing is when we get a chromatic note, and there's two types of chromatics when we're playing these sorts of phrases. One is the encirclement or the enclosure, which is when we go from above or below a note to the other side of it and then resolve to the note we're targeting. And you can do it both ways. You can go from below to above and down, or above to below and up. The fact that the note is chromatic is more important to that jazzy sound than the fact that it was an encirclement. So what we can do instead is to go for a chromatic approach, which is where we just choose any next door chromatic note and use that to resolve to our target note instead. And by combining those two approaches, you're going to find that your phrases keep the jazzy feel, and the listener doesn't notice that it's changed because they just noticed the chromaticism originally. So it keeps the feel and it helps you to better understand the structure of these scales, because as we know, there are 2 points within the major scale where there's a semitone. So whenever you get to those points and they interact with your phrase in a certain way, you'll have to make a slight change. So I hope you found that one useful. Please leave me a comment down below with some of your sequencing tips. As always, I like to learn from you guys down there, and I hope you guys are chatting to each other down there and learning from each other's comments, because there's always some really good ones. Please do give this video a like, subscribe, ding that notification bell to be updated with my future videos, and share this with any friends who may also find this useful. And as always, I hope you're all doing very well, getting plenty of practice in, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers!
Roll up, let me embed a story you'll never forget. A drip, drip, but drowning in debt now. You can't buy your way out, and I heard you find it difficult to cope well. Here by this bottle full of hope.